All right. Well, welcome to the session about improving customer service as we take a look at Dynamics Contact Center with Copilot Studio Agent. How many of you have seen Dynamics Contact Center so far? Few of you. How many have deployed Dynamics Contact Center or the omni-channel experience or the old solutions? None of that. So some of you have just seen it. Anyone have the trial spun up? Okay. So you can spin up a free 30-day trial. You can keep spinning up another 30-day trial and another one, just like DJ Khaled if you'd like to, each and every single month if you want on that. So today we're going to overview the Dynamics Contact Center as well as some of the components that come with the Copilot Studio and voice-enabled bots. So specifically here, as we're talking about bots, we're going to go through the voice enablement section and make sure that you all understand how you can use that with BTM tones for it. That's probably the biggest learning curve on it. For those of you that are, how many of you use an existing contact center today? Nobody. What? You deploy them, but you don't use them. Okay. Which solutions do you deploy? Okay. Got it. I appreciate the hesitation on the last one. Thank you. So with that, as we're taking a look here, we're going to go through a variety of different items. Again, as we think about this, if you're deep in Dynamics Contact Center, have lots of exposure, there's going to be some repetition here at the beginning to make sure everyone's understanding the power of Dynamics Contact Center. We will jump into some demo. I do have recordings in here if the demo does fail for us, because again, when I'm using trial environments, I think Microsoft forgets to pay them to run from time to time. So I have it all recorded here as well. I'm unable to use our specific demo environment because we have another demo going on for a paying customer. So the paying customer wins over you all, unfortunately. So with that, we can certainly go through it. If there are questions throughout the sessions, obviously feel free to chime in. I'm happy for you to ask any and all questions as we go through. First of all, as always, thank you to the sponsors. As someone like myself that speaks at a handful of events a year, they wouldn't go on without sponsors overall. So certainly make sure you swing by if you have not done so already. Introduction here overall. Here's me, Pat Petersen. I'm a director at RSM. So I work with organizations enabling technology solutions. So I work with Teams Telephony, Dynamics Contact Center, Genesis, and a few other voice solutions overall. My team implements them, and I support the implementation process. I have been a certified trainer since 2011, working at RSM now for almost 10 years. More specifically, though, I own the 1975 AMC Pacer, so it's a flashback. And I'm located in Minneapolis, so it's now summertime, so I'll be able to actually take it out on the road, which will be nice. Otherwise, it sits back in the corner. But with that, if you want to connect, feel free to connect. My blog post is at the very bottom. The slides will be available as well here as we go through. When we think about it, the first thing I like to jump through here for us is when we think about why this is important. So we're really at a turning point. If we think about contact center or just communication with customers in general, we kind of limped along the last few years. We've essentially allowed online meetings to be successful, right? You all remember what happened 5 years ago now, where we, had in-person meetings and now everything is remote and we're all comfortable being in remote meetings. And yesterday when Juan was talking, I appreciated that he took the FOMO, because if you look at my calendar and I'm assuming your calendar, the amount of meetings that you're unable to attend, you feel like you're missing out. And then he used the term JOMO for joy of missing out, if it's intelligent recap. So when you think about poor customer service, it just hasn't been invested in, right? A lot of organizations have said we need to focus in on the next thing. Now that online meetings, now that collaboration is there, obviously we're using tools. It's important for us to think about where can we help this out? And specifically, when we think about the different systems down below, all of our data is siloed. A lot of your data in organizations, you have Salesforce for a CRM, you're using, Avaya for your phone system, you're using Teams for collaboration. Nothing's working together. And when we think about that, there's certainly tools that help with that integration piece of it, whether it's Power Automate or what we're going to talk about, Copilot Studio. But when we're starting to use a tool like Dynamics Contact Center, a lot of those features that we would need to customize or configure are already done for us. And so I think that's an important takeaway for you all, is that it's a lot faster to get off the ground because the integrations are all natively built. If you want to bring Teams telephony into Contact Center, meaning I want to be able to transfer a call from a queue to a user in Teams, I just have to check the box to allow that to happen. If I want to be able to chat with somebody in Teams while I'm taking a call or working on a case, I just need to check a box to allow that integration to happen. So that's probably the key takeaway that I'd like to say, as we're thinking about existing systems here overall and poor experiences of having those siloed data. The other item there in the second over from the right-hand side, the service representatives. When we're thinking about someone working on an item here overall, you're using multiple tools, right? How many of you have everything on one screen? Unless it's a really wide screen, that generally doesn't happen, right? I think the whole idea of having more than one monitor is because of our inability to actually have everything integrated together. So when we think about having more than one monitor, it's important, right? We need it for productivity's sake. But why do we need it for productivity's sake? It's because we're minimizing windows too much, and we realize the more we switch. There was a stat out there, I vaguely remember it, so I'm not going to try and quote it at all. But it was about the productivity of Microsoft Teams when it first came out, and the ability when you embed everything in one application, it was crazy. It's like 21% time savings by not having to open up a multiple windows and tabs to get to different areas, right? And we all live that. And so when we think about that for our agents or human agents that are actually working together on here, that type of item is key. The brittle integrations, I think, is another item to call out. I think this is similar to like Access databases or looking at specifically tools that are kind of past their prime. So when we think about integrations overall, there's better, faster, more efficiently. The last thing I'll make mention of before I switch slides, today we're going to talk about agents, and agents in this presentation can mean two different things: a human agent or a Copilot agent. So if I confuse you at all or need to ask questions, feel free to. When we think about the idea of using agents here overall, we have a couple different items to think about. So we have our customers here in terms of being to come in. This first section is really where I see organizations starting to adopt and build specific tools. However, the challenge we have is when we're building those chatbots or voice bots or IVR specific solutions, if they're junk, no one's going to like them. And so I think that's an important takeaway, is that when you think about AI, the interactions, if I talk to my mom who's 75 years old and I say, "Mom, how was that interaction on your Alexa?" She'll say, "It didn't do what I wanted to do. Alexa's garbage." Right? And then I look at it and I look at my 14-year-old, and my 14-year-old's going to say, "Alexa's great because Alexa plays all the songs that I want Alexa to play." Okay? So that self-service world that we live in, I think, is really important for you to sit back and program. And we'll talk through some questions to get started and obviously plan out specifically for it. But that's the value of this solution with Dynamics and obviously other tools out there in terms of those agents that are out there available to you. Then we move into the assisted service. So that's where it gets escalated to a specific agent overall. So when we think about that, the nice thing about this solution here that we'll talk through and hopefully see is that when I start a conversation here and I'm presented with information from a knowledge base, I'm presented with information from a public website, I can ask questions and interact that way. When I move over to that assisted service, all of that history moves with the interaction, right? So when you're using a bot, that bot actually goes across and is used and maintains that entire interaction overall. So again, I think that's really kind of a key takeaway here of those concepts of those agents overall. So when you think about where to start overall, those of you that deploy contact centers, those of you that are in charge of them, work on them, or even participate and call in to a contact center, you can appreciate a good experience. That experience overall here, I think, is key. Is identifying what is the goal of that IVR solution, right? What is that goal? What are we trying to accomplish? Oftentimes, what I'm seeing organizations do is they're taking their old IVR solution, press 1 for accounting, 2 for service, 3 for whatever, and they're just putting that into the newer solution. That's not actually using any of the tools, though. And if the goal is to cut down the amount of times that things get to that assisted stage or get to those agents, you really need to make sure that you take a step back and say, how can we use AI to help with that? The other item, I was in a session earlier in here, and the other item that I think is important with that is how often, and I think I have a question on this as well, maintenance and updates. How often are you updating it? This isn't a set it and forget it type of scenario around Popil. You do need to make sure that you're reviewing and continuing to update it. You don't have to start with the goal in mind. You can really start with just that simple phase 1, then enhance it phase 2, and add more features and functionality along the way. Some other questions here as well is what tasks are we going to have it do? It doesn't have to be autonomous, meaning it goes and grabs the information. In fact, that scares a lot of people when you're starting to interact with those agents, and it can go and naturally go and grab that information and summarize it for you. You do have the ability to ground those in specific areas from a knowledge-based perspective. So when you're grounding those overall, what that allows you to do is say it only has access to this data or only has access to this website. There's some gotchas there on how long the URL can be, but hopefully Microsoft fixes that problem. The last item to think about is how are we going to handle those exceptions? Have any of you ever been part of a technology deployment where one person derails the entire thing because it doesn't do their one thing that they need it to do? So this is an important piece because as a new technology, how are we going to make sure that it solves all of the problems, right? Dynamics Contact Center, real quickly, does not have wrap-up codes. They don't. They use AI-generated topics. The concept is the same. But if you're dealing with someone that is mined on, I need wrap-up codes 100% of the time, you have to work the change management approach to try and get them to understand that it's the same thing, and now their agents don't have to choose one. And then it's the conversation on, do you trust a human or do you trust a bot to figure that out? I'm going to take the bot to figure out the topic 100% of the time over a human that's going to choose a drop-down menu. That's just my opinion. So something to think about there as well as you're going through this. All right. So there's 3 main concepts to talk about here as we get through. There's triggers, there's actions, and then there's, drawing a blank on the last one, topics. So when we think about this, the first one to think about is triggers. What is actually happening along the way? So are we using phrases? Are we using specific information? What are we using to actually trigger the bot to take action? The phone call in is a trigger. We can also use different wording and different items there. If it's a chat bot, we can use different items there too. The next one is topics. So when we think about topics, this is the way that we can organize things different. If you're someone, has anyone built a Power Automate flow in here? You're going to see very similar, except topics is a relatively different concept. Topics are multiple flows. One bot is a big workflow that works together. So think of these as stages, if you will, if you've done workflows previously. Anyone built SharePoint Designer workflows back in the day? I miss some of those 2010 workflows. You could make them do anything you wanted them to do, even loop forever if you needed to. There's a reason why those aren't around anymore. So topics are a way of you being able to organize a lot of different things. And then again, when we think about actions, this is the actual work it's doing. Okay? So I wanted to go through those because as we take a look at the different items and we dive into the agents, you're going to see those pieces come up overall. Actions are where you can do things. So whether it's calling APIs, actually integrating with other tools, sending messages, prompting the user for something. You can look to Dynamics and pull information from a Dataverse table. The one thing to think about here is as you're looking at the Dynamics Contact Center solution overall is it sits on top of the Dataverse. So it has access to all of that data that you can then reuse time and time again. And if you have data that's outside of it, whether it's in ServiceNow, whether it's in Salesforce, and you want to bring it into the contact center for case management or anything of that nature, essentially all you're doing there is replicating that data over into the Dataverse tables that are available behind the scenes. So what that allows you to do is, if you have your data anywhere, as long as you can get Power Automate to go and grab it and synchronize the data up, you can be successful with it. All right. I don't know why the picture's missing in the middle. This was a slide I borrowed from Microsoft without the picture in the middle, I guess. So when we think about here overall, this is the key thing about poor experience. So on the left-hand side, when we think about what a poor experience is, it's the long wait times. It's when we're calling someone and it's taking, too long to resolve our problem. It's the disconnected experience that's being transferred to different people. It's the self-service. We all love self-service today. How many of you would prefer to speak to a bot than actually speak to a human? I would agree with you. If it can solve the problem 100%. How many of you start using web chat though when you have a problem on something? You go to the website and use web chat, right? When we think about voice bots, that's a little scarier because you're like, how do I have this interaction with that? Has anyone used Copilot, the personal version of Copilot, where you can talk to it and it talks back to you? There was somebody that had a relationship with Copilot. And it went on for a while, and then they were devastated when they broke up. Somebody told me about it. So I think it's all possible, right, for different things to do. I think the key thing here is that we waste a lot of time. We waste a lot of money when it comes to the idea of, that poor experience. Things are escalated on a very regular basis. All right. So when we think about the idea of using a CCAS solution like Dynamics and CRM here for us, a few different things to think about. Over on the left-hand side, we have our customers. Notice we have Copilot Studio here for us. Copilot Studio, you can build as many bots as you want. Obviously, consumption, this is not a licensing session, although one of these days we should probably have a licensing session to talk about how they're licensed. But essentially, we have all those bots that are available. And then in the middle section here is when we have the idea of the agent specifically. Again, when we're thinking about this, we're talking today specifically about Copilot Studio and its integration up on top with Contact Center overall. When we think about the idea of the desktop or the third-party application, that's where we have the ability to integrate and bring those pieces in overall. All right. Let's go ahead and let's talk through the scenario here for us real quickly, and then we'll get into a demo. So the first thing to think about from a self-service perspective is what can we do for self-service? So what are some ideas? Let's take the demo I have built is in terms of a county government. What are some items in terms of your state and local government that you could automate and make it be so it's not human? What are some things you can do? Calling the check on a water bill. When is it due? What other things could you do? Street light out, right? Could I report that? What other things? Change of address if there's some sort of notification. Anything else you contact your city or local government for? Obviously, the hope is probably not happening. Complain about your neighbors. Check a building permit, right? Check a tracking on something overall. So when we think about that portion of it, we do have an example here for us to see in just a second. But when we think about this overall, this is where we start to see some of the different information. So we have our different channels on the left-hand side. Then we move into the idea of self-service. What can we actually do self-service-wise? One of the things that I used to struggle with before my city went every week pick up on recycling was, is recycling this week or next week? Is it a blue or gold week? I don't know what that means, but I have no idea. And how do the holidays mess up that schedule? Okay. And so specifically, one of the things they did is they just started putting it on their website. It was like the banner across the top, when there's a big emergency, they would be like, this week is blue week. And you're like, I still don't know what that means, but cool. Then I figured out that I was blue week. But being able to call in, right, and just check real quickly would be essentially simple. The automated classification, the ability to detect sentiment, identify skills, or specifically bring in that customer information. Then we have the assignment portion of it, which is when we get to the queues. We will not have time to build all of that today, but we'll at least be able to talk through that. And then over on the right-hand side is the recordings, transcripts, and conversational history. So the scenario we're going to run through here today, and I have it recorded, so maybe we'll just stick with the recording, and then at the end we can have some fun with it, is we're going to call into a state and local government. We are going to essentially ask a few different questions, and then at the end, we're going to have a successful confirmation overall. All right, so we're taking a look. Don't know if sound's going to work.
Now let's take a second to explore the voice.
I can talk through it too as it goes. Let me see if I crank up the audio if it's... This may be fun, guys. Ready?
Channel with inside of Omnichannel.
I'll just play it without the sound on, and then I'll talk through it, and I can fast forward. Let me just mute the sound here real quick. All right. Let's get to where there's actually action happening. There we go. So here what you can see from a screen, this is the pop-up coming in from a call. So that caller called in, there's audio on there of what that greeting looks like. From a contact center perspective, once I've answered that call from an agent, I can see on the left-hand side that specific piece there. So you can see it represent or recognize my phone number. That's my cell phone number. Allows me to come in and see that. Notice on the bottom area here that this is our transcript as it's all coming through. That transcript is coming through. Now this is going directly and escalating to an agent. We did front end this with a bot, and I'll go through that at the end here today. We'll actually build one and see it in action overall, hopefully. But what this is allowing me to do here is that I can actually see see a variety of different pieces of the transcript. I can see interactions before it got to the agent. So any interaction with that bot is going to show up here before they get to the agent. Across the top portion of it, you can start to see some of the sentiment here, as well as the ways of transferring a call, being able to go ahead and record or stop recording that conversation. If I had anyone else logged into Teams, we'd see that down on the very bottom, as well as the ability to transfer to different agents for it. Again, this is that experience that the person lives in today overall. This is that answering that call. So if you're contact center, if you're using queuing today, that's that experience. They answer the call and they're immediately placed there. You see that integration with Copilot overall? I mean, you can't say Copilot. I should bring a bottle next time and pass it around every time to Copilot. But with that here, as you think about that summarization of the interface, now you can see I did hide the transcript previously, so now you can see that transcript come in overall. So you actually get to see that back and forth. There's where I can see the water bill as well as the information along the way for it. Again, with that, as we're taking a look at some of the different other items here on the far right-hand side, which is going to get to in just a moment. There we go. Is the idea of actually using Copilot directly inside of that conversation. There's my Teams chat portion of it, as well as my assistants down below with the light bulb on here, my Smart Assist that allows me to actually come in and see the topic that's generated. So those items on the right-hand side are all listening to the conversation or listening to the bot. So think about that interaction with the bot. What can I help you with? You need help with this. Does this work? Nope. Okay, I need to do more. All of that is being managed and basically kept track of. And then on the right-hand side, that's where Copilot will actually come in and do that. So here you can see I'm asking it, I need help with my water bill. And then over on the right-hand side, I can jump into the Copilot portion. Hopefully this is the recording where it worked. There we go. We can see it's generating information on there. It also has other information on our water bill. So again, this is information on my water bill. I can copy and read that specifically as I need. So again, with that, a very efficient and quick way for you to go ahead and use it. If I want to paste that information in, I can obviously paste that information. So from an agent perspective, even before solving the problem here, I have the ability to very quickly and easily interact with it. What you will see on the far right-hand side, that Copilot agent you see right there is actually a Copilot agent that you can customize and ground on the data you want it to be grounded on. What I mean by that is if you want that Copilot to only have access to a specific knowledge base, you can do that. That is different than the voice bot. That's different than the chat bot. That is essentially the Dynamics Contact Center Copilot bot. And if you do nothing, it's only going to use public information for you. So this is actually using the knowledge base within inside of Dynamics, the public web, and SharePoint knowledge base. So it has all of that information together. It also can be using existing cases or existing information if you have that available and want that available. So with that, as we're coming through and seeing some of that portion here overall, come on, I'm sure I'm saying something very enlightening as we go through this. It's almost better to have it as a recording, so that way it keeps us on track and it's not all over the board and it didn't scream fire along the way. All right. As this is finishing up here for us, I guess I'm showing how you can write an email here. Is there any questions on what you're seeing here, specific pieces? I do want to run through a chat example so you can see that interactions back and forth, and then we'll move into building one for us. So any questions here? For those of you that have never seen the experience? Yeah. So those, all the bots, essentially you could build, hypothetically, you could build one bot to handle SMS, email, and voice if you wanted. I think that's a dumpster fire if you try to do that. So you would actually have separate bots specifically, and then you assign them to the appropriate work streams. And then from there, then that work stream is what triggers which agents and the skilling and those types of pieces. So the only... Yep. Yep. Yes, that's over here. We'll see that specifically on the SMS. So all the steps that the customer took when they called in would be within inside of the transcript of the actual interaction. Yes. Yep. This was a live human that was actually, I was a recorded voice conversation between. So anything taking place over here is a live agent, with the exception, actually let me jump to I think the chat one's going to be better for you, because you're going to see it on the chat portion here. So here you can see overall as we're interacting with the chat, we're actually typing in. So you can see welcome to City of Springfield. We did mock, this is the City of Springfield, Illinois website, not related at all. I don't know. The person who helped me with this loves The Simpsons. And so they picked Springfield and I built it to work with Springfield. I was like, but why? Why did you pick that? So here's the information. So you can see that piece, right? I need to pay my water bill. What's your account number? 8675. What's your first name and last name? Tommy 2, because he likes the Rugrats as well. What's your contact or contract number? That's all being done as part of that agent. Okay? So it's pulling back my balance here. And now it's saying, what do I want to do next? So in this moment here, we go ahead and pause it. In this moment here, obviously that's a web chat interaction. This could also be a voice chat interaction, right? Probably take a little bit more finessing, a little bit more to deal with the pronunciation, announcing different items, those types of pieces. But that's a web chat portion. Okay, so that's all being done. All of that information here, as we go through, is actually going to come through and show up because I'm clicking on representative. All of that history is going to now be on that live agent panel on the left-hand side, which I think that you can see the escalation come over, the magic of cooking. Why am I pausing so long before I'm answering that? All right. The videos in here do have voiceover too, so you can see on the right-hand side, that's the chat portion. On the left-hand side was my acceptance. I actually think I slowed this video down because I went through too fast. All right, so here you can see that information come through. As that loads, you're going to see that interaction with that bot, which I think was the question of where does that interaction come through. There you go. You can see all that information from you. So from that portion, I'll go ahead and pause this here real quick. From that item, again, the value here is that that bot that we front-ended that human interaction with, I now have access to immediately. See that as an agent. So I don't have to go and find it somewhere else. The other item is if I transfer this to somebody else, they also get all the same information. And you can say, well, that's a long transcript. How am I going to see that? When it gets transferred to you or when you answer it, you immediately get that summarized view. So you get a summarization of what was actually talked about or discussed. Mm-hmm. Yep. Correct. So if we walk through, I know this is the chat example on the screen, but let's just say it's a voice conversation for the sake of the question. That little conversation over there that I'm having voice related, obviously, what's my water bill, that type of stuff, the bot is answering the questions back. What's being recorded, though, is the transcript of that interaction. So that transcript is all being written down. So the transcript in this case is one-to-one because it's just pulling that over, but voice obviously would be doing a voice translation, transcription, of that conversation. What I have here then is, I guess it's up at the top. I can actually summarize that conversation and then I could copy that and move that somewhere else if I needed a copy of what was discussed. All right. So with that portion, you can also see, obviously, the internal message of it combining all that information together. So when you think about programming and creating these bots specifically, they don't have to just function like existing integrations or existing kind of IVRs. You can build them to be really intelligent in terms of what it can do, how it can surface that information back and bring that back. All right. I'm going to just click through this to make sure there's nothing else I wanted to show you. There's that conversation summary, I guess, in the middle section of the screen. Here's where you can see that highlight portion of the actual interactions between I guess Tommy 2 in this case and the city of Springfield 4. All right. Here to really see other than some back and forth. You can see Copilot come in. Before we switch to a demo for the last 20 minutes or so, any questions on what we've seen here so far? How many of you are like a little more interested in Dynamics Contact Center now? Maybe worth of. I think it's hard because what Dynamics Contact Center, I don't have the slide in here specifically, but it takes like 6 applications together. It has Power Automate, Azure Communication Services, the Dynamics platform, Dataverse, as well as Copilot Studio together to build the solution. So I like to call it a layer cake because if you like cake like I do, the more layers it has, the better it is. And so that's where I come up with that. All right. There supposedly is. However, is there anyone from Microsoft in here? The teams on the back end are 2 different teams. So if you port a number into Microsoft, it's a different team than if you port a number into Azure Communication Services. In fact, two different countries. So until they figure that piece out, I'm not sure how this is going to change. Right? So I think the extensibility model is there. And frankly, the key, you saw the ability to transfer that conversation or if Teams was there. On the right-hand side in this demo, I don't have it enabled, I guess, but you have chat, right? That's a really big hand. But you have chat right there for you with the little chat icon. You can have your phone icon there as well. But at this current moment, if you want your agents to have a Teams number and also take calls from the contact center, they need to be licensed in both areas and have calling abilities in both. Just like any other contact center that you would integrate with Teams. The way around that, of course, you can get around that a little bit depending upon if you use a direct routing type of solution with it. I mean, there's ways you can help out with that. But then you got to be careful on the cost because they don't discount you on the cost when you use a direct routing partner. In fact, it can be more expensive, which is crazy. But yeah, good question. Any other questions? Okay. Let's go through a live demo here for us so you can see what it looks like. So here is a conversation just going through. If you're not familiar with how to set up a contact center trial, you can do that. Contact center trials are available for 30 days. If you Google Dynamics Contact Center Trial, click on the Try Now, log in with your Microsoft account. It will spin up a trial environment for you. You can technically do it on a production environment. I'd recommend, obviously, you maybe have a separate account or a burner type trial version for it. The trial version is fully functional with the exception of one thing. You can't place outbound phone calls from it. So you can have call-in up to 30 minutes during that month. You can have unlimited SMS with it. And then you can obviously program as many web chat interactions as you want. So this is the agent experience. I'm not even sharing that. Yeah, let me. It builds all that crap for you, yes. Yep. All right, you good now? Perfect. Sorry, I was not sharing my screen as I was showing that. So now we'll jump into the admin portion overall. So here's the administration portion of it. You'll notice when I click on that, two main apps to think about here. You have the admin center and then the contact center workspace. Overall, if you're used to the old, anyone use the old omni-channel solution? Yeah, that would have been under customer service. So you have obviously those two that get built in. So the contact center workspace is for the end user, the agent, whereas the admin center is for the actual admin. This is where all the programming gets done with the exception of the bots. On my homepage. All right, so a few pieces to make mention, and I'll come back to this here because I'm going to start with bots on the left-hand side for us. We take a look at the bots portion here. This is where I'm going to see all my bots that are available for it. What you'll see here is that I can see those bots that have been created. I obviously have a trial Copilot, customer service trial Copilot, a PVA trial, and then the voice simple that I created a couple hours ago. You can see the work streams that they're assigned. So there's a question earlier today about how do I program this? How do I know it all comes together? It comes together at the work stream level. So your voice work stream can have one bot associated with it. You can reuse the same bot. So for a lot of people, they'll actually use a bot, the web chat bot, for an SMS bot at the beginning. I'm a little hesitant on that because when you think about that interaction of web chat versus SMS, generally people, when they're in web chat, expect immediate responses. SMS is not as much, right? So you may want to think through that a little bit. But again, if you don't have an SMS solution today, but you have a web chat solution, you could essentially turn it on and use that. You'll notice on the far right-hand side, two of those on the bottom say in progress. They've been saying in progress for 2 days ago. Welcome to a trial environment overall. Then we have our channels. Our channels are where we can actually see the different types of interactions and program those. So we obviously have our chat channel, messaging, our voice channel. I'm going to click on manage under voice channel just so you have the ability to see some of those settings in there for us. So again, we'll get back to that work stream level. So this is that interaction of that demo work stream and what's coming across here for us. You will notice at the work stream level, this is where I have the ability to tag or select the appropriate bots down at the very bottom. Okay. So when you think about that bot is an independent item, so you can configure that completely. And when you're ready to roll it out, all you have to do is say, attach to this specific work stream, and then the work stream goes live. So the bot is all programmed separately outside of the contact center solution. Then we have a variety of other different items here. There's our queues if we want to manage our queuing behavior, routing, our work streams, which I already introduced a little bit on work streams already. And then we have the agent experience, specifically in some of the administrative settings overall. Before we jump into bots, are there any questions or curiosities here of what you've seen or what I've mentioned, or maybe something I've missed that you're like, how's that connect together? It's more, so workstream would be the service function. You could have multiple types of interactions per workstream, I guess. It would be another form of it would be a form of a container. The key thing there is you can have more than one voice workstream per contact center. So what that means is you could have different queues, if you want to use that term. I know there's queues here too, but you can have them all roll through a specific multiple workstreams. It could be. I don't know if I would because I wouldn't consider them large enough. Work streams, how we've approached work streams specifically is at the channel level. So voice has a work stream, chat has a work stream, SMS has a work stream, because you can configure. If I come into this demo voice call work stream, you'll see some of the items here that you can obviously build out with specific rules in terms of how it routes the work, the queues it goes to, the capacity in terms of who can take it. So you would build multiple work streams specifically. And if you look up at the very top, this is a voice one, so it's got a phone number assigned. You'd build multiple work streams if there were different numbers. You don't have to do that. No, but I should create one because I think you're onto some, because a lot of this you have to figure it out, right? It's not like IKEA directions. If you've ever built furniture, you're like, I can build that. And then all of a sudden you're going through the direction, you're like, oh, I missed a page, right? It's one of those. It's a true story, not to get on an IKEA rant, but they have that as is section where you can go and buy things that are damaged or things people have returned. There was one time I didn't shoot a picture, but it was somebody had built an entire hutch with drawers inside out and then returned it. It was fascinating. I was like, how is this even possible? But all the drawers were the things were on the outside, right? The screws were on the outside. I was like, this is bizarre to me. How did it? Anyways, I should build a diagram, yeah. No, but that brings up, that was back to that, when do I use a work stream type of piece? When we've approached it, it's been traditionally when it's a different purpose, right? That's when we built a different work stream, different phone number, different chat interaction. Your Teams bot's going to be different than your web chat bot. That's going to be different than your SMS bot. Yes, they can all end up at the same area, but that initial greeting, that initial interaction is all going to be different. that's where we started. That's where we put it. But again, is that the way it was designed? I mean, I don't know. My mom uses Excel to do her Christmas list. Like, anything's possible. That answer your workstream question? If it caused a little more confusion, that's okay. All right. So let's actually jump into the bot section here so we can see that. All right. So here's the different bots that are available. You can see, obviously, some of them were spun up. I'm going to just go ahead and click on Add for us. Has anyone built a bot in Copilot Studio before? Do you have? Okay. Lesson for the wise. That bot name, you may have seen it in the web chat, appears. I have not figured out a way to change the name of the bot in web chat. You can change the display name, but you can't change the who wrote it. So be careful. I've tried everything. I couldn't figure out how to do it. I just gave up and accepted whatever name I created. All right, so as it's creating the spot for us here, we can start to see, obviously the bot's created. There's our voice symbol too. When I click on it, it takes me to the Power Virtual Agents or Copilot Studio interface for us. A few pieces to make mention of is your bots are not technically voice enabled out of the box, which means they can't take natural language and process natural language. There's also some additional settings here that I'm going to review for you real quickly. So across the top, you can see your knowledge portion here for us. If we wanted to add knowledge sources, this is where we can bring in other information on public websites, SharePoint information, or Dataverse, or upload specific files. One of those other bots that I had on there, the contact center trial bot, is that right-hand panel of Copilot. So if you wanted to customize that right-hand experience, it's one of those bots that comes built in for you. One word here is that at least last time I tried, about 2 weeks ago, you were limited in the amount of flashes or sub area. So good luck with that if you have a robust public website you need to navigate. The topics portion of it, these are the topics that are created for us. So when we think about topics, they're groupings of those. You can transfer the interaction from topic to topic to topic. Call them stages, if you will, whatever term you want to use for them. But when I think about topics specifically, you can program everything in the greeting topic and ignore the rest of them are there. Or you can actually program it and build it through those stages along the way. On the right-hand side, you can see there's my virtual assistant where I'm able to actually test and see what it's going to come back with. So even if it's a voice-enabled bot, you can still interact with it by typing. So when you're looking at testing items and going through, of course, you would need a call to make sure that the automated messages coming back are correct. Go ahead, yeah. So I think it becomes more of the efficient aspect of it if you need to use the choose your own adventure type of piece. So when you think about what you mentioned about I'm calling in a number, I need to look up information on my water bill. I'm going to go to the water bill topic, and then that's where that's going to get programmed. And then I need to call about building permit and go to the building permit, because then if you need to make any adjustments, tweaks, adds, you're not adjusting the entire flow, you're just adjusting that one topic. So I'd say it's efficiency based for it. For a lot of organizations, if it's a very simple IVR, you can program it just at the greeting level. But topics obviously allow for some more addition. You do have the ability to also track when they go to topics, so you can see how many times people are going to more reporting pieces. When we think about actions, this is actions to complete specific portions. I'm not going to actually go through this. One of the sessions in here before went through this in terms of actually coming through. I was fascinated. There's now the ability, those are all third party. Create a team, get a team. Create a team meeting. Fascinating. I didn't know that was there. I didn't think about actually interacting that way. But so you could have actions obviously go through. Activity, analytics, and then of course the channels that it gets published to overall. And then if I come over here, I'm going to just jump into one item for us. I'm going to jump into settings. There's where we can change the name. I'm going to come into the voice portion here. This is the one piece that you need to do if you want it to be voice enabled with these tones. You do need to go ahead and choose to optimize it for voice. If you don't, it will not be available inside of your contact center for you to actually interact. It will only be available as part of an SMS, chat, social media, email type of interaction. So here's where you have the ability to change some of those items. One thing that I think Microsoft's working on a little bit here is some of the silence detection, as well as some of those latency pieces. If you're in a really loud room, it's obviously going to pick up all that information around you as well to try and trigger what that information is. Tweak some of the sensitivity. All right, we'll go ahead and save this. You do notice across the top it does use obviously the environment portion of it, so it is all part of the Power Platform environment as well. All right. Oh, one piece here before I jump on. If you are someone that does want to use generative AI to help respond to items, you can do that. Out of the box, it's going to be stuck in the classic portion, which means you are building specific trigger action phases. Bot framework. I say this, you do that. If you wanted to have some sort of intelligence there, that's where you can go ahead and utilize the generative portion of it. In fact, the web chat demo that I stopped through does have generative included in it. So if I type in an item, it's going out to a knowledge base, grabbing the information back and sending it back to that customer. How many of you are comfortable with the bot actually generating a response to a customer? Anyone there yet? Depends how well you're controlling the knowledge. Probably depends upon what the question is, right? Which obviously ties to the knowledge overall. Asking what day of the week the garbage is, pretty low level, right? Not a huge concern. But I'm changing my flight, probably a little bit bigger of a concern. So you can obviously build this and use this much further if you'd like to. All right, let's go ahead and get out of the settings here for us. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good approach because it does take a little bit longer, right, to go and generative that answer and bring it back. So I don't know if I'd front end an interaction with that, right? But if it's some comment, when you think about calling into a contact center with interactions, there's some pretty consistent things people are calling in for. And if you can get them to that area or use those keywords to help get them there, then obviously using it as that catch-all or that oddball, type of pieces. Yes. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at that real quickly. We only have about 5 minutes left, so we probably won't get this published along the way, but we'll just jump into the greeting portions here. I'll zoom in on my screen so you guys can see it. So there's obviously the trigger phrases for us to be able to see. So when you're thinking about that overall, that's how you can wake the bot up, is what I'd like to say there. Those are some of those keywords. And then at the bottom here, this is the message that we have available to us. Obviously, since it's voice enabled, we have speech and DTMF tones available to us now. If you're doing DTMF tones, it does take a little bit of, you have to listen for what the specific value is that's being received back for it. So it's not as simple as programming a Teams call queue or auto tenant rather, where you can just say, if they press one, do this, do they press this? You actually have to build logic in there, a little bit different for you. When we think about that, there's our greeting portion of it, and it reads it obviously how it is. But if we think about some of those portions overall, this is where we can start to bring in some of those different actions. So if we want to send a message, that's when we're presenting a message to somebody. If it's a voice-enabled bot, part of the voice channel, it's going to read it out loud to you. It's pretty good for the most part. If you need to ask a question, you can ask a question. We can add conditions in here. We obviously can utilize variables. When we think about topic management, this is where we can route to different topics. So this is where we have the ability to say, go to another topic, end all topics, go to a specific step, end the conversation. Or the one in the middle there, transfer the conversation, is what's actually going to transfer that to the agent. I also have the ability to interact other items in here as well. My Zoom is kind of, I think, screwing this up a little bit here. So when I go ahead and look at other actions, this is where it can go and grab information. So if you need to go and pull information from a CRM record, you can use Power Automate to go get that information and present that back to you. So again, a very valuable piece of it, because what you're doing is you're not only just using Copilot Studio, but you're also extending that outside of it using Power Automate. If I want to ask a question, here's where I can choose to ask a question for us. So as I'm asking that question, I have the ability to actually put in that information. Notice I have the ability to add in DTMF tones, or I can add options in. If you choose to add options and code it manually that way, what that's going to end up doing is that's going to allow specifically the person to click on each of the buttons to get there. Or you can obviously program it and say, please say whatever your term is that you'd want to do, and then route to the specific topic or conversation. So if I go ahead and just say topic, I'll go new option. Let's keep it simple here for us. So here's where our options are. You can see that that's where the variable is stored. And then the last item here that we'll go ahead and do for us is that we can choose to transfer the conversation. Notice I have the ability to transfer to an agent, or I can transfer to an external number if they're, where that's done often is organizations have whistleblower type of things. So if you need to transfer outside, you can do that, and it does not hit your contact center. It transfers out even before it hits overall. So with that, here as we take a look, if we were ready for this bot, we could go ahead, obviously save it. We could publish it out. When we go to publish it out, it's going to yell at us because we allow anonymous access. The bots specifically, they want them to obviously have some permissions around them. We don't have that. There's the risk. If I look at the risk, it's going to come through and essentially identify that there's no end user authentication. So that brings up a good point. You could put authentication around it if you wanted to for that, where we typically see that as part of a Power Pages portal where somebody would have to authenticate or log in, then use that login method to then be able for web chat purposes. On voice chat, obviously haven't had that come up yet in terms of authentication for it, but you can bring in and integrate other third-party tools as needed for that authentication. So with that, we have about a minute left. This will publish. We could assign it in part of the work stream portion of it. I could assign the appropriate bot there, and we could actually test it out and see it. But again, from a time perspective, we probably need about a half day to go start to finish and actually build it. So hopefully we're able to see, obviously, it in action with the voice bot, see some of the interactions with the Dynamics Contact Center, as well as be able to see the starting point to actually get started building the bot. Questions? Yep. So the contact center specifically uses Azure Communication Services behind the scenes. Thank you all. Dynamics uses Azure Communication Services, which you do have the ability to use direct routing if you have another carrier, or Microsoft through their solution can also host your phone numbers, and you can port your numbers into that overall. Is that your question? Yes. So you can bring that number into Azure Communication Services, or you can keep it with your existing carrier and connect in from a direct routing perspective. So that the connection to it is not at the bot level, at least for this specific piece. If I look at my channels here, you'll see some of those available to you. Here's where you can publish the specific bots coming through. The connection for the voice, though, is specifically at the workstream level. So the numbers are coming in at the workstream level for us. So this is where we have the ability to tie in. So the bot is really dumb when it comes to the phone number that's being used. So there's the bot that you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. So it knows that when that number is called, go use that bot at the front end. In the current state, if you need to get if a number is hosted inside of Teams or Microsoft Calling Plan, the extensibility solution should fix this, but the solution today is to actually move the number from Microsoft to Microsoft. You have to move it, you have to port it from Microsoft over to Azure Communication Services. Direct routing, you can connect in with a connection. You would have to go to Azure Communication Services. So your direct routing solution, if you had Teams today, you'd have be connected SBC to Teams, and then you'd be connected as well. In this current state, yes, the extensibility model is supposed to fix that. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all for coming today. Yeah, thank you.